Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Business of Business podcast, Two Daughters and Their Dad. I'm your host, Staci J. Dempsey. Thankfully, like always, I have the one and only dad, one of the other daughters, and we have all of our wonderful viewers and listeners. Good morning, good afternoon to the both of you and to everyone tuning in with us today.
Good morning. Good
You with
morning.
us, Jen? There we go. There we go. You're just a little delayed. Yeah, we weren't sure if you were rocking and rolling with us. We know it's you know what, today's one of those days where it's like every little thing that normally is not that big of a deal kind of feels like a big deal, and even though it shouldn't be, it just kind of feels that way. Which, you know what, there's going to be days like today, which brings me into our topic of, days like today where things that typically should not really make us feel frustrated or just a little wacky, things are a little out of sorts, it feels a little out of sorts. What can we lean on? We can lean on some daily practices for ourselves and our business, that can make a big impact, can make a big difference in just how our business operates, how we show up for ourselves, how we show up for our teammates, how we show up for our family. And so, how fitting that today's just been a little funk master flex. Those are Dad's words, not Stacy's. Okay, well, they're mine. Little funk master flex today, but here we are. So, we have, Dad, who I would say has always been the role model of just put one foot, he would say, put one foot in front of the other. What's something that you can do for yourself today? Something positive, something that, may not add up to a lot in the day, but over time really makes a big difference. And what can be those daily habits? What are those things that we can implement? Really kind of immediately, because it doesn't have to be a grand change, right, Dad? It doesn't have to be, tackling, maybe just say a bad habit that might take us some time to kind of figure out or get rid of, over a longer stretch of time, but really focusing on those daily habits of what we can do. And so maybe why don't you share a little bit with our viewers and our listeners, just maybe what are some daily practices that you've had over, your 40-year career, that, over time have added up to making a big difference.
Well, you hit it right on the head. There's a couple different things going on here and around this topic. One is, you want to implement change or some level of change in your business. Um, whether it's, system changes or marketing, whatever it may be, is how do you approach making those changes? Then there's you have systems in place, but a day like today where things just seem a little wonky, as you indicated. We're having some internet issues, we're having some delays getting here because of an accident, just stuff. You have a client dropping in right at the last moment, but it's in that type of scenario too. So let's talk about the first one. You want to look at implementing change in your business, some level of change, to impact an area or areas. Well, my experience is you got to break it down into some smaller bites. You got to break that change down into, okay, what's some small things I can begin with to begin moving towards the change? Because if we, in a lot of cases, whatever the change may be, if you try to go, like all in right at once, you can take the risk of overwhelming yourself, overwhelming your staff, overwhelming your clients, with kind of a robust, all in, we're going to make these moves. Where, when you go at it more incrementally, saying we're going to make small changes starting out, and they might be very small. It might be almost, not even noticeable, but the commitment is to build on that every single day or week, add to it. One of the great books out there, around this topic is, and I've referenced it before, is Atomic Habits, is making those small changes over time. The atom is the smallest molecule, but if you add, and build on that a little bit at a time, you start to become a force. And so, making those decision on, okay, what are those incremental changes that I'm going to start making? Then, then there's, okay, now, like today, we have, things are just off. Well, just step back and say, okay, all right, let me just get back to my system. So what is that? Just not let the curveballs, not let the unexpected throw you too far off. Things are going to happen. We all know that. We can come in, to the work and with the best intentions of, having this go 1, 2, 3, 4 throughout the day, when right out of the gate, something changes, So, but the key is, you know, okay, I can't help that. I need to deal with that. But how quickly and how soon can I get back on track and really focus on, getting back on track? So, one of the things that I've always tried to do when it comes to daily is, and there's a book out about this called Eat the Frog Early. As I want to look at my day and say, okay, what are some challenging things I need to deal with, on this Tuesday? Well, okay, I've identified, here's some challenging. Now I've got a choice. I can kind of just kick that can down the road, because if there are things I don't really want to do, it may be difficult conversations, it might be, whatever the case may be. But, I know that all I'm going to do is have that in the back of my mind. I got to deal with that today. I got to deal with that today. So that will impact your effectiveness, because you've got that stewing around there. So one of the things I've always tried to do is there now, thankfully it's not every day I have to eat the frog early, but are there things I need to deal with that are uncomfortable or out of, kind of something that's just, difficult? Well, let's
Yeah.
get that done first thing. Let me just get that out of the way, get it done. If that's having a difficult conversation with with an employee, with a client, let me make that call now. Let me have that conversation so it's not stirring throughout the day, because I don't want to do that. So that's one thing that I would recommend everybody, especially entrepreneurs, keep that in mind about getting the difficult things done early. And then the other um, system that I've implemented over the years is, what are my, what is the goal? What's the overarching goal of the business? What am I in pursuit of when it comes to, you know, building my business, working in my business, and having, 3 or 4 things that are specifically for that,
Yeah.
to move the needle forward. And so, to say, okay, I'm going to make, these phone calls to potential new clients, or I'm going to make these phone calls to clients to try again. Maybe there's opportunities that I want to share with them, but try to make, positive movement calls, positive movement towards goals early in the day. Because again, when you have success in that, it kind of sets the tone for the day. especially if you've just eaten the frog, right? You've just done that. Now, okay, all right, I want to shift this over to something positive towards growth. So that's another certainly daily habit system that I think has really worked well for me. And then I'll just kind of go to the end of the day, to finish my day with an understanding of what my day is going to look like tomorrow, or at least, a good portion of it, so that I'm not leaving thinking, okay, if these things are up in the air or tomorrow's, I'm not sure. I want to be able to leave work, and be, comfortable that I know what my day is going to look like, the next day. I don't need to be out days and days and days, typically, but, I certainly want to know, you know, what my day, and then that way I'm also ready for the curveballs. I'm ready if something, comes in at the unexpected, then I can, be ready for that, more so than if I'm just kind of coming at it haphazardly. So those are two or three things there that I've been doing, for many years, and have worked.
Years. No, those were really good points. And I know the biggest one for me, the eat the frog early. That's really I like the way that that's worded, because it's easy to push those things off and say, I'll go kind of do these. I want to deliver some good news before I have to deliver some bad news, and then you're just kind of stewing on it, making it worse for yourself. So Jen, why don't you share maybe some of your daily practices or some of your daily habits, that you feel that maybe has really made a difference in your business?
Yeah, can you guys hear me okay?
We
Yes.
can,
Okay,
yeah.
good. Um, you know, it's funny because starting out, 10 years ago inside of the business, my days used to be what I describe as all over the place. And I found that that just doesn't work for me. Um, in an effective way, right? So, meaning I used to, like, I would do payroll and then I would go get an oil change and then I'm coming back and I'm working with clients and I felt out of control, scattered brained, always like on the hamster wheel. And so once I started to identify, like, how can I manage all of these things better? How can I, because most business owners wear lots of hats, right? And so for me, I think getting into a routine of Monday, this is what needs to happen on Monday. This is my office day. I'm going to do payroll. I'm going to pay bills. I'm going to look at the finances. I'm going to talk to my accountant and kind of keep that. Okay, this is an office day. And then Tuesday, I'm going to be a hairdresser and I'm going to work with clients. I'm not going to pay any bills. I'm not going to talk to any of my um, staff. I'm not going to, I'm just going to be focused on that. And then Wednesday, I'm going to be a mom and I'm going to focus on, taking my daughter to soccer practice and horse lessons. And I'm not going to be, focused on work. And so when you can start to categorize your day in that way, at least for me, it definitely takes some pressure off. It takes some of that stress off. Now, don't get me wrong. I feel like recently I'm like, all right, I got to go to the doctors and I got to come into the salon and I am. So sometimes there's some things that you can't help. But if you can identify those daily habits of how can I break this up into different categories of what needs to be done, what needs my attention, it just makes your day go smoother. You know who you're supposed to be that day. You know what you're focusing on that day. And so it brings organized, it brings less chaos. And I think the people around you can feel that too. Um, when you have a clear focus each day and you try not to overlap those, like I don't want to be working with clients and then have to stop and get and sit into a meeting with one of my stylists. Like, who am I going to be that day? What am I focusing on? And that tends to just have those daily habits run a little bit smoother. And then, you know what, if something financially needs my attention, then that's going to wait until the following Monday, and that will go on my to-do list for that day. And just kind of keeping organized that way will relieve some of that stress. So that way, when you do finish your day, you feel accomplished. You've done what you were planned on doing that day, and you're not, sitting at soccer practice like, oh, I didn't get to have that conversation with somebody, and I didn't get to do this and I didn't do that. And you can just focus on the day to day, and that has helped me so much sleep better at night.
Great point, Jen.
I'll
Great
tell you
point. Yeah.
another way to approach this, and I mentioned it earlier, is in implementing change. And I know, Staci, we were in a meeting down in Texas last week, and we heard a presenter on, having a net positive gain in your business. And
Yes.
so I know it took, we had a good conversation after that we really thought that was a great approach, meaning what that means is that when you step back, say, you're finishing up the day as a business owner, and you're looking back, and hopefully there's ways to measure this fairly easily, did my business have a net positive gain today? Now that's going to look differently, for each business, but that could be, um, again, increased revenue, increased, more customers coming through the door, higher, um, just more service, that generated more opportunities. Where are there net positive gains in the business, so that we know, even though they're not big gains, or not always necessarily big gains, but if we're having net positive gains in our business each and every day, over time, there's going to be a compounding effect to that. And that compounding effect is what we're looking for, right? We're looking to compound on these incremental changes, incremental increases in business. And then again, sometimes we might be seeing, something go the other way. Well, that's not what we're looking for, but what story is that telling us? What's that saying to us, that maybe we need to be making a shift somewhere? But I really like that net positive gain. I know you like that session too.
Yeah, I did, and I thought that like you said, Dad, at the time the gentleman that was sharing it was referring to revenue and and money. But really when you kind of break it down, it could be in any category in your business that what this the marketing is not being as effective as we want it to be. So how can we take a look at this so it can be a net positive? How can we reach more people? What is it that we need to tweak? What is it? What area do we need to expand? What area do we need to pull back in order to have a quantum leap forward? As Hassani Pettiford would say, sometimes we have to take a step back. We have to be net. We have to have a negative so we can have a quantum leap forward. But it could be in any area of your business where we're just looking to have some type of net positive, and it could just be one. It can be 1% better, $1 more. Again, it doesn't have to be this giant, but if we're doing that every single day, we have that mindset that we're trying to improve, we're trying to get better, we're trying to make more money, we're trying to reach more people. That over the course of a year, what this gentleman was sharing, that over the course of the year, well, it shows up in the culture of our business. It shows up in being a leader on the scoreboard. It shows up in being looked at as wanting to share what's working in our business and being looked to as a mentor. It shows up in a lot of different ways. And all of that can make a big impact, not just for yourself, but for all the people that you're working with and all the clients that you're trying to reach. So yeah, I really like that. And I know we talked about how can we use that to our benefit here in our business, and certainly sharing it with Jennifer. So there's also the trickle down effect of trickle down effect of the net positive as well. So um, So yeah, that was all really great, and also spending time in personal in professional development, and being around other people, that was certainly a net positive for us as well. Um, so any other, that any other, I was thinking, are there any books or, I know we've been talking about and sharing, the 15-minute blitz, of the, like the cliff notes of books and whatnot, which I say blitz because that's the app that I'm using to, to, I say read these books, but to listen to, like the highlights of these books. But any books um that come to mind for you that maybe you could share with our listeners today on, I know you mentioned Atomic Habits, anything else that
Yeah,
maybe comes to mind?
that's probably, again, that's a great book, and again, you can get
Yeah.
it on an audio book. Um, it's on many of the 15-minute book summaries, but it really, I think, hits the whole area of, small but effective change and habits daily, to produce monumental compounding growth. Any of the books out there, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, which is a classic, any of those books like that, around habits are going to be good resources for you if that's what you feel like you need, as a just a better set of habits, and systems, to reach your goals. And I tell you, I am reading a book right now that kind of speaks into this too, but it's called Inner Excellence, Pathway to Performance, and more to come on that. I'm just about 3 or 4 chapters in, but already, it's just having that mindset of, the working for something, that is outside of ourselves, and
Yeah.
that, we get so wrapped up, especially as entrepreneurs, in being successful, having a successful business. Um, and, sometimes we can get so wrapped up in it, we lose sight of really what the bigger purpose is. And that's what this book does. And it allows you to kind of get back to, all right, like in my case, yeah, I mean, we have certain things that drive revenue. But at the end of the day, if I just say, if I help as many people as I can help, in the course of a day, week, month, and year, all that other stuff is going to take care of itself. The revenue, it's about serving people, with your business. And we've talked about that, in every business, Jen's business, our business, at the end of the day is about, serving people,
Yeah.
because, we know when someone walks out of Jen's salon and they're feeling good about themselves, that's just going to lead to other positive things, for them, their families, and their life, so again, that's serving people. So again, you can tie that into so many ways, because if you have that larger purpose, that's going to be maybe a bigger motivator to build good habits and good systems in your business to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. Jen, any books or anything that you've read that comes to mind? Even though even if you don't know the title off the top of your head, but anyone that you
No, I mean, I just agree with Dad. I mean, obviously the books that he mentioned I've already read and are great topics. I think that the point of kind of even what we're talking about is that obviously it's important to keep bettering yourself, right? Because the better that you can show up in your business and your personal life and your daily habits, then the better results you are going to get. And sometimes that's easier said than done because we all have life is lifing. Currently I'm reading mom books because that's where I'm at in my life, right?
yeah.
So you know, taking the focus and shifting it around as life happens for you. Um, but yeah, I mean, all good stuff. I think that, sometimes it can get, I was talking to Janet, our producer, about this before we hit record. Sometimes it can get, it can be overwhelming when we talk about daily habits or who we want to be or what we want out of our business. And what we have to realize is that if I can't compare myself to dad. And, you know, dad is on his own. I can take information and motivation and support from him, but he's obviously been in business much longer, different experiences, different, much more success. And so we can either let all of these things kind of get to us and be like, oh, I wish I was at this place in my life, but it is a process to continue to work on to get ultimately where you want to be. And so hopefully we find that to be inspiring, something that we think that it should take 3 months to do. Maybe it takes us 5 years, and that's okay. But as long as we keep moving forward, moving towards that, then, it will all show up in the end for each of us. So
That's right.
Yeah. One of the gentlemen at our seminar in Dallas, he said, it took me 15 years to become an overnight success. And so certainly that, was a practice of daily good habits, wins, successes, failures, changing things, reevaluating things. And here he was on the stage giving a phenomenal talk and presentation. And very easy to look like, wow, that happened really fast for Matt. But no, it was a process and his process and his journey. And so, yeah, 15 years to become an overnight success. So we hope that you all will reevaluate your daily habits. Take one that maybe you feel like you can take care, that you can change, that you can improve, or that you want to take on. And like they say, the fastest way to eat an elephant is one little bite at a time. So we will see you guys in our next episode. Bye bye.
who says that? Where did you